Some time ago, I was in Jerusalem along with the former Archbishop of Canterbury, 4 or 5 others, and we were meeting with one of the founders of Hamas, Sheikh Talal. He'd served 18 years in prison, muscle-bound, hard in his home. We'd had a solid lunch with all of his family. His son had just been released from prison. He'd lost many of his children. Each one of us was allowed to ask one question. My question to him was, what do you think of suicide bombing? I didn't like his answer. So I leaned forward in the smoke-filled room and all of his cohorts around. I said, Sheikh Talal, you and I may never see each other again. I want to say one thing to you, sir. I said, 5,000 years ago, a man called Abraham, who you know and you follow, took his son up to a mountain not far from where we are seated. Do you remember that story? He said, yes. I said, you say he took his son Ishmael? We as Christians believe it was Isaac. I said, at this point, it really doesn't matter. So that's not the point I want to make. He took his son, and as the blade is about to come down, God stopped his arm and said, stop. I said, do you remember what God said? He shook his head. I said, God said, stop, I myself will provide. I said, Sheikh, very close to where you and I are seated 2,000 years ago, God kept that promise. He took his son, and this time the blade did not stop. I said, before I leave, I want to say something to you. You and I will keep offering our sons and daughters on the battlefields of this world for land and power until we receive the son that God himself has offered. And when you receive that son, we will have to stop offering our sons and daughters in these war zones, killing and blowing themselves up. There was silence in the room. It was the last question. Finished. Walked outside. He was bidding everybody goodbye. He came over to me and just patted me on the face like this. He kissed me on both sides of the face. He said, you're a good man. You're a good man. I hope I see you again someday. And the tears were running down his face, and he walked into his home. Do you know what a message we have for this world that is so unique? And now we only hear it. We think about it. We don't understand so much of it. Thomas Merton said this about communion, because I believe one day we will see that face to face and understand. Listen to what Merton said. He said, I left the altar rail and went back to the pew where the others were kneeling like 4 shadows, 4 unrealities, and I hid my face in my hands in the temple of God that I had just become. The one eternal and pure sacrifice was offered up to the God dwelling inside me. The sacrifice of God to God. Christ born in me, a new Bethlehem. Sacrificed in me his new Calvary. Risen in me the new empty tomb. Offering me to the Father in himself. Asking the Father, my Father and his, to receive me into his infinite and special love. Not the love he has for all things that exist, for mere existence as a token of God's love, but the love of those creatures who are drawn to him in and with the power of his own love for himself. When you and I commune, Bethlehem, Calvary, and the empty tomb converge in that experience in memoriam. When you and I arrive at the gates of heaven, Calvary, Bethlehem, and the empty tomb will be embodied before us. I believe for the first time we will feel the Spirit touched in a way it has never been touched before. The metaphor of the home, the materiality of our destiny, and lastly, the magnificence of it all. The magnificence is simply this, that we ultimately come to that presence where all answers are now consummated and every thread in your life comes together because you will now know him as you are known. He will reveal why every thread was there, why every disappointment was there, why your DNA was there, what role your will played, and all of this coming together in a glorious consummation of the magnificence of it all.